Today, you will learn what are the three things you could or should try before launching your new show. And I know I should be the one telling you to launch your show today or yesterday, but I also know that launching this kind of project, this big project, takes time and most importantly, mindset work because I've been there and it took me a long time to launch my first podcast, to try to land a guest opportunity, to start my email list, to start showing up online, to speak up, to voice my opinions, and so forth. So I know exactly how you feel, and I want to make life easier for you. This is Say Yes to Podcasting, where solopreneurs learn how to start podcasts that attract their ideal clients and do the marketing for them. I'm your host, Anja Lordanic. Let's launch your show. This episode is specifically for solopreneurs who want to launch their podcast to grow their business, who want their podcast to be an extension of their business, a marketing tool. And I know there is a lot of your plate as is, so I prepared three simple experiments that are equally as important and serve different purposes, but all of them will help you save time, money, and energy and will lead to new discoveries. And you will see what I mean in a couple of minutes. The first thing I would like to tackle is validating your idea. And I know that this might sound boring at first. Validate your idea, do market research. It is the last thing any of us want to do. Granted, some people do enjoy doing market research and do that for a living, but that is not me. However, that doesn't mean that we have the luxury of skipping this step. We need to validate our podcast idea in order to do anything else, any further steps along our journey. And I know what you're thinking. How do I know if my podcast idea is actually good? How can I validate my idea without recording any podcast episodes, without getting immediate feedback from my listeners? Come to think of it, I could record multiple episodes on validating your idea only, and I will do so in the future, but I will briefly talk about this now and answer the questions we asked a minute ago. How do I know if my podcast idea is actually good, if it will land with my listeners, if I will have any listeners in the first place? I have a really simple exercise for you. Finish this sentence or fill in the blanks of this sentence. This podcast is for blanks who want blank. The first blank refers to your target audience, and the second blank refers to either the solution they will get from you or the problem they're having. I will give examples for both. Let's use me as an example. This podcast is for solopreneurs who want to launch profitable podcasts. So I'm not necessarily targeting a pain point, I'm targeting a solution. The solopreneurs I'm speaking to in every episode of my podcast want to launch their podcasts. However, you might be a PT, a personal trainer, and your podcast might be for new moms who want to lose weight after giving birth. Their desire, losing weight, is linked to the pain. They want to get rid of that weight. You might be in the finance industry, and your podcast might be for newly employed people who want to start investing right now. You see where I'm going with this. And these messages need to be more precise, more niche, in order to land with the right listeners. But I wanted to give you a couple of examples so you get the purpose of this exercise. Now, the second question we asked earlier was, how can I validate without recording episodes, without receiving feedback, direct feedback from real life listeners? And this is much simpler than you might think. Often, when I have a new idea, and it doesn't really matter if it is podcast related or not, it might be business related, it might be something personal. But I like to run it by people who are close enough to me, but far enough from the problem or from the idea that they will be able to provide objective and relevant feedback. What does this look like in practice? For example, you can ask your closest friends who might not be solopreneurs, who might not have their own businesses. You can ask them if an idea for a podcast like yours sounds good to them, if a podcast name makes sense for them. Who do they think your podcast is targeting? Who do they think your ideal audience is? Is it clear or is it ambiguous? Does it make sense? You can ask a couple of your friends to give you their feedback. You can ask your spouse, your partner, your parents, maybe. Your parents, or better yet, grandparents, are a great filter for this. If your topic is clear to them and if it makes sense to them, it will make sense for most people. Of course, if you're ready, you can go further. You can create a post on social media, asking people, polling people. You can ask your email list if you have one. Ask them for their honest opinion. I'm launching a podcast about X. Does this sound like something that would be of interest to you? And ask them for their honest opinion. This is something you need at this stage. Even if no one approves of your idea, which is unlikely, you will still get valuable feedback and you will improve on it. Because we're still talking about real life people. Maybe some of them are in your inner personal circle. Some of them might be your ideal listeners. Either way, nothing beats getting feedback from real people. And of course, you can always talk to ChatGPT, but we all know that it is not always 100% reliable. As you can clearly tell, you don't need a big audience for this. All you need is maybe a couple dozen people from your personal life or your business peers, and they will tell you what they think. And if you need help with that, I'm always available for a quick tip. You can reach out on LinkedIn, which I will link to in the show notes. Now, let's move on to the second thing you could do before launching your own show. And this is probably the most fun one and something that will reveal a lot about you and the person you're recording this with. So, I mentioned another person, and my suggestion is to record a mock episode with a co host. So, recording a mock episode with a mock co host. Why should you record a mock or a fake episode before launching? This way, you will learn a lot about yourself. You will see what you sound like if you don't have prior public speaking experience. You will notice if you speak with clarity, if you're nervous, if you don't sound confident enough. You will also notice if there are any tech issues. And you will gauge what it feels like to have a co host, to have a person by your side recording alongside you. And I have a confession to make. In an ideal world, my favorite format would be co hosting. I would be co hosting this show. Luckily, I had this opportunity in the past and I co hosted a show in Croatian for 2 years. And that was many years ago at this point. And I truly enjoyed that process. The dynamic when recording with another person is like nothing else. It is much more difficult to record episodes by yourself. Even though solo episodes are absolutely the most powerful for most of us if we want to have a business and a podcast, work hand in hand. But co hosting a show is something truly special, and I would advise anyone to try it out. You can try this out with a friend, with a peer, with a fellow solopreneur, and I would actually encourage you to do the latter, especially if that person wants to launch their podcast as well. This could be a fun experiment for both of you. And the final suggestion I would like to tackle is podcast guesting. And I will talk more about podcast guesting in my episodes in the future. But here I will just break it down why podcast guesting is helpful, is beneficial for everyone, and how should you approach it in the first place. The benefits of podcast guesting are similar to recording a mock episode with a co host. But this is much more high stakes because you have to do quite a lot of prep work beforehand if you want to do it correctly and if you want to actually land some podcast guesting opportunities. However, once you do land that guesting spot, you're able to share your expertise, share your knowledge, your stories, connect to another person's audience. They worked years together, and we shouldn't take that lightly. And then they will share that conversation, which could potentially lead to leads and clients for you. As opposed to mock recording podcast episodes, recording with an actual host, actually being a guest on other person's show, you will see how interviews work if you haven't done any already. What stories you tell best, what stories land best with the host, what they're interested in the most. All of these things are crucial for you as a podcast host and as a podcast guest and as a business owner. You will also gain confidence and you will realize, okay, this is what I need to improve on. This is what I need to ditch. This is what I should keep doing. So you're basically doing audience research, but in a bit of a different way compared to validating your idea we mentioned first in this episode. I could speak so much more about each of these categories, and if you're interested, you're always welcome to shoot me a message on LinkedIn and tell me which episodes would you like to hear about next, and I will happily expand on the topics I mentioned today. Whatever you decide to do, avoid the mistake of launching in isolation without doing a bit of market research, seeing what will land with your listeners, if there are any listeners out there for your show. So let's recap what we talked about today. The three things you could do before you launch your show. The first thing you could do is validate your idea. The second thing, record a mock episode with a co host. And the third thing is try podcast guesting. If you try out any or all of these suggestions, do let me know because I would love to see how it worked for you. Either way, I'm positive you will learn a thing or two about yourself, and those insights will surely help you in the future when you decide to launch your show. Thank you for being here, and I'll catch you next week.